the pandemic. And people were showing up on my doorstep after being laid off from their jobs or being forced into retirement early. And it really broke my heart because so many people were working hard to accumulate wealth in the ways that they knew how, but it really wasn't enough, or it was barely enough for it to last them into later in life. And I kept hearing people say, I know I'm not wealthy enough to have a financial advisor, but can you help me? And that was really a turning point for me. I realized that if these people had had access to quality financial advice earlier in life and created a financial plan years prior, then the sudden change in circumstances would not have been so devastating to them. And the fact that they didn't feel wealthy enough kept them from seeking help. So that is a failure of my industry that I am really working hard to overcome through education, like we're doing today, and also having more flexible options for people to work with me so that they get the quality financial advice that they need to be financially successful and prepared. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Wanda so that we can learn about disaster preparedness.
Thanks, Melissa. All right, natural disasters. This week marks 2 years since our little cities, countries, the entire world shut down due to the coronavirus. You know, a couple of months ago, we watched Big Sur get engulfed in flames due to a fire. You know, our area here in California, I believe most of us are here from California, are subject to flooding, to winter storms, to tsunamis. We had a tsunami alert a couple of months ago. So a year and a half ago, we had 3 wildfires burning in Monterey County at one time. You know, we helped our friends and family evacuate. We suffered, we breathed in smoke for weeks. We had record numbers of acreage burned in California. So we know that natural disasters happen. We're aware of what can happen to us here in California. Gone are the days of hurricane or wildfire season. The scope and scale of disasters has grown. So we now see these events happening at various times of the year. We're so aware that these natural disasters happen, so much that when we do live through one, we say to ourselves, oh my gosh, I should have done something. And some of us might go out and buy a disaster kit and call it a day. But when the smoke settles and the dust settles, you know, human nature dictates us to forget, and we move on in most circumstances, which begs the question, what can we learn from disasters? Now, 71% of Americans admit they don't have an emergency plan in the event of a disaster. Here's something I learned from my fire. I call it my fire. If we listen carefully, disasters can actually teach us. We have to learn to accept them, and we have to understand what our role will be. Most of the time, bystanders are the first on the scene, so we become the first responders before first responders can even respond to our disasters and what we need for help. And we've got to learn that we need to prepare ourselves. You know, preparedness is not a dirty word. You know, we put a lot of thinking into and planning when it comes to birthdays and holidays and graduation. You know, heck, we've got tax season next month. But when it comes to emergency preparedness, a large majority of us are just frozen. And we don't start. We just kind of say, oh, well, we just won't deal with it. And I've been curious about this for many years, you know, why people don't prepare. And if any of you here have done nothing to prepare, there's no shame in that. I applaud you because you're here today and you've shown up to listen. So thank you for that. Don't ever feel bad about that because you're here today. So the subject of disaster preparedness isn't particularly appealing. You know, some think that those that are into disaster preparedness are overzealous, kind of guns and ammo, preppers, kind of strange, weird, or odd. But you know what? They're ready. And so what I've learned from my disaster is that it can actually empower you. It can actually build confidence. It can reduce fear and anxiety. It can strengthen your family, your organization, and you can actually help those that are more vulnerable, you know, with resources, those with disabilities, elderly, or even children. So that's important to know about that. So next slide. All right, the way I like to divide disaster preparedness is up into a few steps: getting connected, knowing your disasters, and knowing how to respond, as well as the very popular topic of the disaster kit. And the most important step in disaster preparedness that people don't talk about is the communication plan. Now, the way I see getting connected is actually twofold. It's connecting to technology and emergency alerts, as well as local resources through learning opportunities. So I know that not all of you are here from Monterey County, but we have systems that are in every county. And here in Monterey, we have Alert Monterey County, which is from the Office of Emergency Services, something you can sign up for and get real-time alerts. And that also exists in Santa Clara County as well. So definitely find out what your emergency alert system is in your county and sign up for it. Now, getting connected also means using these lovely cell phones that we have, whether we love them or loathe them. We can't be notified of every disaster, but it's a good idea to be notified of the ones that we can to be prepared when possible. It rules out the element of surprise, if you will. That way, you know what steps to take if there's a major weather system approaching or a wildfire. So what I recommend and what I have on my phone is I have a few apps. I have a news app. I have a local news app, KION or KSPW, a news app that gives you instant information if there's a wildfire. My friends at the Red Cross have great first aid apps. My Shake is an app I discovered for earthquakes. It's pretty interactive that I like as well. But if your cell phones aren't working and we need access to information in the event of a disaster, I'd recommend to my clients that you get an AM/FM radio. And if you want to take it a step further, I recommend getting a NOAA radio, which stands for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And you're thinking, what is that for? What that is, it's basically through the National Weather Service. This gives 24-hour weather information based on your location. And you might be thinking, why do I need that? Well, it's going to be really helpful in the event of an emergency. If we don't have access to our cell towers or cell phones or landlines or anything, we can tune into a NOAA radio and get real-time information on what's going on in the middle of a disaster. Now, I said that getting connected is pretty much twofold with technology, but another way you can get connected is through learning opportunities. I advise you to sign up for a first aid class, at least have one family do that. There's also CPR classes at the Red Cross, and you can also join a CERT class, which stands for the Community Emergency Response Team. Most communities have them. It's a free class, and it can educate you on things on how to turn off your gas and water, disaster medical operations, and it's actually a really great team to be a part of. So, all right. So how do we respond to disasters? Now, we talked about a lot of disasters, at the beginning when I started, but for today, I'm just going to touch on earthquakes and home fires. Now, some of us were raised that when there is an earthquake, you run to a doorway, and some of us were raised to drop, cover, and hold on underneath the desk. I always thought the doorway was safe too, until I heard years ago that this was a myth. The idea of safety in a doorway actually goes back to the 19th century. Back in California, lots of homes were built of just adobe, and the only wood in the house was the wooden door frame. When it's kind of funny, I actually, on our family ranch in San Luis Obispo, we actually had an original adobe from the 19th century. My sister and I would go in there and just quickly run out because it looked like it was going to fall on top of us. But in a major quake, the adobe crumbled back then, and the only thing that was left standing was the wood frame door. So if you're presently living in a 19th century adobe, which I know you are not, go ahead and stand in your doorway, but I don't recommend it. So with a strong earthquake, standing in a doorway, you actually run the risk of swinging objects going back and forth and flying on the shelves. And in stronger earthquakes, I have family in Mexico City, they go through 9.0, 10.0 earthquakes, and things are flying off the shelves that can harm you. So your best bet for an earthquake is to drop, cover, and hold on under a sturdy piece of furniture. And if you're not near a sturdy piece of furniture, I call this situational awareness. Let's say that you're out at a restaurant, scan your area wherever you're at and find an area that you can go to a corner and drop, cover, and hold on. Okay, so let's talk about home fires. We talk a lot about wildfires, but I thought today we'd talk about home fires. The US media has reported between January 1st and yesterday, there's been 657 home fire fatalities. And these are caused by cooking, heating, electrical distribution, lighting equipment, intentional fire setting, smoking. Portable heaters are responsible for 1,700 fires per year, resulting in 80 deaths per year. So it's really important that you have working fire extinguishers in your home and smoke alarms on each floor of your home, and make sure to check them. Our friends at the fire department have given us some tools little phrases to learn, if you will. Keep an eye on what you fry. And what that means is, never leave your kitchen unattended for any reason. If you're cooking, have someone come in and watch the stove. Let's see what else. They also say, close before you doze. And what that means is at night in the bedroom, close your bedroom door. So if there's a fire that breaks on the other side of that door, you can escape out a window. Having that door closed can actually buy you a few seconds and actually get you out of your bedroom faster. So I like those. But most importantly, in a home fire, and I can't say this enough of what I saw at the Red Cross, get out and stay out and be safe. All right, so let's talk about disaster kits, go bags, if you will. Most disasters happen fast. These bags are designed for you and your family. So you have just exactly, everything that you need, and you have to leave in a hurry. So make sure not to overpack these. Some people really go a little overboard. This is just the essentials of what you need. You're going to want something that you can lift. And this one right here is mine. You can actually wear in your back, and it has, has wheels on it, so you can actually roll it. So that's pretty helpful. So it's important to have a kit for each person in your household for up to 72 hours. And I advise that you get a mini one for your car and your work. And please don't forget those pets. What do you put in your kit? You want to make sure that you're going to have, food, water, important documents, cash, small bills. Not what is shown right here. You're going to want a map, medication. I'm happy to send lists of what to pack, so feel free to contact me in the chat and let me know, and I can email you a list after this presentation. Now, do you buy or do you build one? That really is up to you and your budget. You can save money by using an old duffel bag in the list I provide you, and you can do it. And it's pretty amazing, what you already have in your house. You buy duplicates, maybe you have an extra can opener, things like that. But if you don't have time, I recommend that you buy a good one. This one right here, which is mine, is actually designed by a couple of firefighters back east that I found when I was researching kits. And it's a high quality kit, and it came loaded with essentials, and all I had to do was personalize it, which was fantastic. How often do you check your kit? I personally check mine twice a year during daylight savings time. It's that time when we gain or lose an hour of sleep, as we just experienced. And it's also a good time to check your smoke alarms, any expired food or batteries, or medication, a new prescription for your glasses, hearing aid batteries, anything you need. And it's just a good idea to familiarize yourself with what is in your kit. All right, the most important step in disaster preparedness is the communication plan. Now that you have your bags packed, where do you go? So this is the communication plan, which I like to call family dinner. This can be done during a holiday or a special family meeting. I recommend that you close your eyes for a second and think about who are the people in your life that you would want to hear from, and they'd want to hear from you in the event of a disaster. This is your network. This is your community. Now, do you know their phone numbers? I don't know about you, but I can't remember more than 5 or 6 phone numbers to save my life. Write these numbers down and have them easily accessible. That's really important to share with your network and your community. Have an emergency contact person, choose an out of area contact person that won't be affected by this local disaster. This way your contacts can check in with that one person to share information as to where you are and if you're safe. It's also important during this family dinner, as I call it, to talk about emergency meeting spots. Where would you go? Where would you meet? Let's say, Melissa's son is in school and she needs to know, where her son will be dropped off in the event of an emergency. Pick places like landmarks, like a library, or a landmark like a school or a park, but choose 2 places, because depending on the type of emergency, it may not be the right choice. It may be impacted by the disaster. So escape routes, something to talk about with your family during this family dinner, as I call it. It's a good time to sit in each room of your house and think about a fire starting. Would you know at least 2 or 3 ways to get out of that room? I'm not trying to make you paranoid. I'm just trying to make you aware of your surroundings, and take this thought with you wherever you go. It's really important. Now, in my fire of 1996, I'll never forget running from my home to my mom's home and scrambling, not only to get precious items and valuables out of the house, like photographs. This is how old that fire was. We didn't have cell phones and pictures, but important documents. You can prepare ahead of time by downloading these documents to a thumb drive and uploading them and sharing them with trusted family members. And what kind of documents you're thinking? I know Melissa's going to cover a little bit about this, but I'm talking about personal records such as marriage, adoption, death certificates, passports, social security cards, property leases, deeds, mortgages, financial documents, debit cards, family photos, medical records, things of that nature. So these are all things to do during your family dinner for your communication planning. So we covered natural disasters, getting connected, how we respond to disasters briefly, the disaster kit, and the communication plan. And I'd like to say right now, not all of this, this is a lot of information, not all of this has to be done today. So bear that in mind. And I'm going to hand it over to Melissa to talk about financial preparedness, and we'll take questions afterwards.
Thank you, Wanda. I love listening to her speak. I feel like I learn one more thing every time I listen to her talk. So it's wonderful. One of the main things that Wanda and I have in common in what we do is that people don't want to talk about their finances in terms of the potential catastrophes that could happen. But that is part of the job of what I do. And so today we are going to talk about financial preparedness and the tools and resources that are available for setting families up for strong financial futures. Those main topics we're going to focus on, because the world of finance is vast, are establishing a cash reserve, purchasing adequate insurance, protecting your assets, and what's most important for my perspective is creating a financial plan. So when I am working with people to create their financial plans, I like to divide their finances and investments into 4 categories: needs, wants, likes, and wishes. Today, I'm going to focus on talking about protecting your needs, which are your essentials to daily life. We're talking about how to protect your shelter, your food, your clothing, and a lot of that ties back to protecting your income sources. In times of disaster, whether that's a personal disaster like a health emergency, car accident, maybe sudden job loss, or a natural disaster like Wanda was just educating us on, having a solid financial foundation is key to your survival and your family's survival. So first up is establishing a cash reserve. This is the first foundational piece of financial preparedness. It should equate to 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. Why 3 to 6 months? Well, insurance benefits, which I will talk about after this, most of them have a waiting period. So if you have 3 to 6 months worth of cash stashed and saved up, it bridges that gap. You'll be able to be supported in the time in between filing your claim and waiting for it to kick in. For people who don't have insurance related products to help them in times of disaster, this cushion is vital. I always say that those who don't have liquidity will quickly acquire debt. And so liquidity equates to that cash. If you have that cash available, you'll be less likely to take on credit card debt to cover your daily expenses. And we all know that credit card debt is extremely difficult to work your way out of if you don't have the resources. As far as your monthly expenses go, you do need to figure out what that number is and what the real number is. I do have a resource for calculating that for you. So if you want to send me an email or message me in the chat, I'd be happy to email that to you after the presentation. If you are just guessing what your monthly expenses are, you're really running the risk of not being adequately prepared. So get out your credit card statements, get out your bank statements, and record everything. If you're like me, I'm a spreadsheet person. I love spreadsheets. So you can dump it all into there, record it over a couple of months to really get a feel of what you are truly spending on a regular basis. And make sure that you don't forget about the annual expenses or the semi-annual expenses, because those don't go away in the event of a disaster. The property taxes will still come due. You still have to pay your car insurance. And I really recommend taking the total dollar amount of those and dividing it by 12 so that you have an accurate monthly amount. Cash reserves should always be easily accessible. This can be at your bank or credit union, or you can seek out a high yield savings account. The money that you set aside that is invested is not considered a cash reserve because that amount can fluctuate based on the market. Like we've been experiencing recently, that could be way up or way down on any given day, and you don't want to rely on market volatility for your cash needs. You want to be able to get to it quickly and easily. In addition to having that cash reserve account, I do think it's important, and Wanda mentioned this as well, to keep a small amount of cash on hand at home. In recent natural disasters, communities have gone without power for days or even weeks. And if your local gas station or grocery store is unable to process electronic transactions and you don't have a cash available, how will you purchase the goods that you need? I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the current crisis in Ukraine. US companies like Google and Apple, in order to punish Russia, have actually completely suspended the use of Google Pay and Apple Pay in Russia. There is that possibility that at some point in time, they could suspend those here as well. I am not trying to be paranoid about that. It's just a fact. They are companies, they can do these things. So if you are reliant on electronic payment systems and have no other backup, you could put yourself at risk for not having the money that you need in a crisis. So keep your stash of cash at home. Just don't forget where you put it. Okay. Next up is purchasing adequate insurance. Insurance is a key tool to protecting those foundational needs that I talked about earlier. Everyone has different needs, and it's important to have yours professionally evaluated to be sure that you are properly covered. I really cannot tell you how many times I've reviewed old insurance policies for my clients and discovered that they were grossly underinsured and sometimes overinsured. Being underinsured will result in you coming out of pocket for expenses more than you should have to. And for some people, maybe that you can't afford. Being overinsured usually results in you spending money on something you don't really need that could be put towards another part of your financial plan. So I've listed 4 categories of insurance here that I think are really vital to protecting yourself when disaster strikes. The first is disability insurance. This pays a benefit when you are unable to earn a living because you're sick or injured. Most policies pay you a benefit that replaces a percentage of your earned income when you can't work. Why is this important? Well, your chances of being disabled for longer than 3 months are much greater than you dying prematurely. And protecting your income stream keeps a roof over your head and food in your belly. Consider what might happen if you suffered an injury or an illness, like a car accident or a heart attack, and you couldn't work for days, months, maybe years. How would you pay your bills? If you're married, you may be able to rely on your spouse for income, but would the single salary be enough to support your household? Disability insurance is often offered through employers, and so you should check with yours to understand what coverage you have access to. I also recommend considering purchasing a private policy for additional peace of mind. And also, employers' policies can be really confusing. So if you need help navigating it, really seek out a professional. Next up is life insurance. While disability insurance is for temporary financial relief, life insurance is key to provide long-term permanent financial support. Life insurance comes in many forms for many different purposes. Under the basic terms of a life insurance policy, the insurer promises to pay a sum of money to your designated beneficiaries upon your death. One of the most common reasons for buying life insurance is to replace the loss of income to a family that would occur in the event of your death. Your family is grieving your loss. The last thing they need to be worried about is how they will pay the bills or whether they can afford to stay in their home. Other reasons for purchasing life insurance are to pay off major debts like mortgages, credit cards, or auto loans, maybe pay final expenses, or if you're fortunate enough to create an estate for your heirs. How much you need and the type that you need really depends on your specific circumstances. And really remember that needs change over time. So if you bought this policy 20 years ago, I guarantee your lifestyle and your needs have changed, and it's worth about evaluation. Work with a licensed professional like myself to determine the best options for you within your budget. And a tip, the younger you are, the cheaper it is. So don't put it off. Next up is homeowners and renters insurance. And I will admit, these are not my area of expertise. I do not work with these products directly, but I cannot talk about disaster and financial preparedness without mentioning them. The right policies should help protect you from the cost of rebuilding your home after a fire, replacing stolen items, repairing your home from storm damage, or from liability claims if someone gets injured on your property. In California, we are certainly at risk for all of these. And in California, we have seen home values go through the roof. So you need to make sure that you are reviewing your policy with your insurance professional to make sure you have the minimum amount of coverage based on the current value of your home and assets. If you don't, and a fire strikes, you could end up coming out of pocket for more than you should. Lastly is long-term care insurance. These policies reimburse holders for care services that support daily living, usually later on in life. You or your family members may need it if you reach a point where you can no longer safely take care of yourself due to physical or cognitive impairment. This could be due to accident, illness, or just advancing age. 70% of people over the age of 65, 70% will need some form of long-term care during their lifetime. And costs in California are upwards of $10,000 a month for assisted living facilities. And that cost is only rising. So this type of insurance can protect the income and the estate of you and your loved ones needing care. Like all insurance, it's cheaper to get when you're younger, and there are a wide array of policies available based on your needs. And I really recommend aiming to start looking at this in your 40s and 50s. Protecting your assets. This is extremely important. It does not matter if you have $50,000 to your name, $500,000 to your name, $5 million or more. If you have not taken the steps to protect your assets, it can all be taken away from you in an instant. Estate planning, account titling, and beneficiary designations are all ways to protect what you own. Estate planning tends to sound like a really big concept for people with massive amounts of wealth, and that concept is false. If you have minor children, estate planning allows you to designate temporary or permanent guardians. If you're in a health emergency, your advanced healthcare directive allows you to designate who will make decisions for you and what measures can or cannot be taken. A durable power of attorney allows a person you designate to handle your financial affairs if you are incapacitated. I guarantee there's not one adult on this webinar today that does not need these items. And if you've accumulated wealth and assets, a properly designed estate plan instructs your heirs how to distribute your estate, and hopefully with tax efficiency in mind. Once all your estate plan is completed, the documents usually arrive on your doorstep in a really massively thick binder, which is lovely and organized, but not very efficient. So put that in a safe place, like a safe, or maybe it's in your disaster kit, whatever you prefer, but also request from your attorney an electronic copy to save on a thumb drive, just like Wanda mentioned. Or if you're one of my clients, we upload these to a system that I have called the Vault, which is a cloud-based system. You want to be able to access these documents easily in a disaster emergency. And the beauty for my clients is that I can also access those documents for them in a state of emergency, which gives them an extra layer of support and care. Account titling. This is one of the easiest steps that you can do today to protect your assets. So it's important to note that at the end of the day, it does not matter who you think the owner of an account is. The account title at the bank or the brokerage firm rules. So if you have a trust document, but your account at a bank or brokerage firm is jointly held with a spouse, it doesn't matter that you listed the account in the trust document. It's not in the trust. Additionally, assets held in accounts without a beneficiary named or estate documents in place are potentially subject to probate. In California, probate can cost 3 to 5% of the estate value. It's a major headache, and you'll also have to pay attorney's fees to help navigate the process. You do not want this, trust me. So tonight, when you get home, go check that all of your retirement accounts have beneficiaries listed and that they are still who you want to get your money. Also log into your bank accounts online and add a transfer on death or a pay on death beneficiary to your accounts. Then add a note to your calendar to do these at least annually. You can even do it like what Wanda said, when you check your disaster kit, check your beneficiaries and your titlings just to be sure they're still what you want them to be. All right, last but definitely not least in my mind is creating a financial plan. The best way to be prepared for the unknown is to prepare for it. So financial planning starts with figuring out where you are now financially and what you need to reach your goals. You really need to be brutally honest with your current situation because that becomes the foundation for everything else. Consider your retirement needs, college funding, home expenses, insurance, everything. Again, I recommend spreadsheets or just making lists. When you work through your financial plan, you want to have an honest conversation about who might need financial support from you. Will your parents need to move in with your family? Do you have a special needs child or special needs person in your family that will always need your financial support? Do you have siblings that struggle financially that you frequently help? The more you think about those people and the long-term financial implications to you, the better prepared you'll be when the time comes to help them, and it won't be a burden on you. Another important aspect is thinking about what aging looks like to you and making a plan for it. Do you want to sell your family home, move to a retirement community? Do you want to age in place and have home care come to you? Do you want to move in with your kids and help take care of the grandkids? There are really a multitude of options, and each options have different financial needs. We might need to plan for a home remodel, so there's a main floor master with wheelchair accessibility, or maybe we need to purchase a long-term care policy like we talked about before. And when you think through this yourself, you can also think about it for your aging loved ones and really start having those conversations now. Know that you do not have to navigate financial planning alone. It really can be overwhelming to tackle. So seeking the guidance of a financial planning professional to support you in getting organized is really recommended. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Wanda to close us out before we open for questions.
Thank you, Melissa. That was very helpful. And I'm looking at some of your faces right now and you're like, oh, that's a lot of information these ladies gave us. But I want to remind you that not all of this has to be done today. You showed up today, which is a wonderful thing. Look at disaster and financial preparedness as a way of life, and look at Melissa and myself as resources to help you. Go at your own pace and give yourself, say, a year, and just start with like 1 or 2 things like every month. And you may surprise yourself and be done sooner than you think. So we encourage you to increase your personal sense of safety, security, and peace of mind to know that you're ready in the event of an emergency or disaster. And please feel free to call on Melissa and myself. There's our information right there. If you want to get our emails, follow us on social media. I also have a newsletter. Please let me know if you want to sign up. It's monthly. It's a lot of fun, kind of gives you disaster tips and things of that nature. And if you'd like to open it up for any questions, here we are. Mr. Smythe.
Yeah, thanks, Wanda and Melissa. That was excellent. Wanda, I got a quick question for you, and then I just got to follow up with Melissa. For your car kit, how is that different, or what items would you have in your car kit that may be different than what you have in your home grab and go kit?
Well, for your car kit, definitely a smaller version. We can't be walking around with a big disaster kit all the time. So like in my car kit, I have essential items. Like I have a pair of tennis shoes. When I used to work in an office before I worked at home, wore heels every day. So I have a sturdy pair of shoes. I make sure to have snacks and food and water in there, and I rotate them because sometimes it gets warm. And obviously things that are necessary for your car. I have extra food also for my dog in case I just gotta jam on out of there. So it really is based on what your needs are. I'm happy to send you a list of what to put in your car as well.
Okay, thanks, Wanda. Question, or just to follow up with Melissa. Thank you for bringing up the issue about having cash on hand at home, and you brought up the situation that's occurring in Ukraine, and just to follow on, I actually took out additional cash because of a concern of over cyber attacks that could emanate out of this crisis, and that's a very real possibility too. And they could knock down power grids, they could knock down payment networks as well. So I worked for Visa for nearly 20 years. So I'm partly responsible for this kind of cashless society that we've created, and people just run around with plastic. And when the power goes down because of a hurricane and people don't have cash and they can't get gas and they can't get food, I mean, it's a real problem. And these networks, besides going down because of cyber attacks or going down because of electronic failures, they can also go down because the networks can crash. I mean, these Visa and MasterCard networks are quite robust, but in some parts of the world they have in fact gone down for hours and sometimes days at a time. So that's some vulnerability, and people should have cash at home. And also, just an update, Visa and MasterCard have both pulled out of Russia. So it's created a problem for the local citizens there.
Yeah, it's absolutely important to realize the vulnerability